Welcome back to Legally Uncensored, where we talk about the law, life, and liberation. I'm your host, Demetria Graves. Today, we're diving into a topic that hits deep. What happens when staying costs more than leaving? We've all heard someone say it's complicated when it comes to relationships, but what happens when that complication starts costing you your peace, your health, or even your identity? Joining me today is Britta Jo, a certified coach and host of the Stay or Go podcast. Britta helps people navigate one of the hardest questions any of us face. Should I stay or should I go? Britta Jo is a fiercely compassionate coach, podcast host, and founder of the Stay or Go community, a supportive space for women standing at the crossroads of their marriage and identity. Through her community, podcast, and private coaching, she helps women consider divorce, getting unstuck, and whether to move forward to create empowered, full lives that reflect the wild, wise creatures that they've always been. And this conversation is part of something special, a two-part crossover. We're starting here on Legally Uncensored, and then I will continue part 2 on Britta's show, where we'll explore what happens after you make that choice, whether you leave or you stay differently. So, with that said, welcome to the show, Britta. Thank you so much for coming and being here and joining our community. Before I come to your community, introduce yourself. Tell us a little more about yourself.
Thank you so much. I am really excited. This is a collab that we've had a couple months planning, and I am so excited that today is the day. Just a little detail background around me. I was raised Mormon, stay-at-home mom for 10 years, and then found myself in this exact situation of just like, whoa, I am deeply unhappy, severely depressed. What is happening? And through a deep process of coming back to really understanding myself better, realized there were a lot of things in my marriage, ultimately in my religion, in my family of origin, that were not aligned with who I wanted to be and a healthy, good life for me. And so through that journey and becoming a coach, now coaching women for it's about 4 or 5 years now, post-divorce, that I've been coaching women around this. Really coming into my own around this message of, choosing a life that resonates deeply for yourself, even when it's terribly scary to make those changes that move you away from what you've known into what feels actually good in your body.
Well, I commend you for that because a lot of people don't even have the opportunity to explore what's going on with them. And the fact that you were able to do that and even now be such an incredible resource for women is commendable. And we applaud you. That is awesome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I want to just get right into it, right? So let's start with something that we often overlook, especially women. We do this all the time. The impact on our bodies when we are in challenged relationships, right? We talk about the emotion, we talk about finances, we even talk about divorce, but we don't talk enough about what that does to our bodies, which I think is probably more important than all the things that we actually talk about, because now we're talking about our health. So, Britta, can you talk to us about how trauma and stress show up in the body when someone is trying to, start the process you did, is understanding, oh, wow, something is happening. I need to explore what this is. And then the second part of that is when you're trying to hold on and you're not quite sure, should you stay or should you go?
For a lot of women, I loved you pointing out, we're very focused on the external, are our kids okay? Are our family members okay? Is the external all right? And we forget to look to the internal. The way stress shows up for women is very individual, right? But some of the patterns that I've seen in my process of coaching women considering divorce specifically, right? I meet a lot of women who are at the point where the effects going on inside their bodies are so great that they can't ignore it anymore, right? And I would say these look like, starting to feel apathy towards life. You start to feel almost like you're a zombie. You're moving through your life, you're going through the motions, but the juice of life, feeling excited when you wake up in the morning, feeling like you want to be alive is missing. There can be years where you just kind of feel yourself slipping away, but it happens so gradually within the dynamic of the relationship that by the time usually, the women I'm working with meet me, there is this deep feeling of like, I don't really remember who I was or what I used to love. I remember being her a long time ago before I got married. So there's a real loss of sense of self. And I think, as many women, we are lovers often. We want to take care of people, but we can get too lost in taking care of everybody else at the expense of having a life that feels like we're still living it, like actually living, not just going through the motions. So those are some of the ways that I see it with women describing like, I feel lifeless. I feel like a zombie. I am suffering, even women being diagnosed with depression, having high anxiety, feeling like they don't feel safe, but they can't really put their finger on it in the relationship or, in the dynamics of their marriage.
The danger that I've seen with these feelings that you've described, and women or men for that matter, not doing the work to regulate that before they start this process can be catastrophic, right? Because you're not taking care of yourself. You're not taking care of what's happening to you. Then you start bleeding on everything else. The divorce process, sometimes me, right? So if you don't regulate that, the divorce process can be that much harder.
Absolutely. That's why when I became a coach, I love coaching women in the point of considering.
Right.
They're still in that key moment before. And the reason why is because you're right. If they do decide to get divorced, I think of divorce as a tunnel.
Right.
Or a hallway. Like once you make that decision, you go, girl. You need to like have your ducks lined up and we are moving strategically, consistently through that. If you're coming into that process already drained, frantic, and this is, I think, is where a lot of women in that space, they want to get rid of that. And they think, well, the divorce will give me that. But I've seen over and over how divorce it's not a magic pill. It's not the magic bullet that just fixes everything. Who you are entering that divorce and then going through that plays a huge part in who you end up being when you come out the other side. So I love emphasizing to women, giving yourself the extra attention in the period before you decide to really start digging into these deeper pieces of getting in touch with my emotions, being able to feel what is my body needing and how do I resource it.
Right. What I think people don't understand either, when you have that chaotic energy and you're deciding to divorce, sometimes you might pick a chaotic attorney, right? That's going to make the process so much harder for you, right? So like attracts like. So if you're calmer, you have a plan, they've come to you, they know what's happening, you're going to pick someone that's going to help you with the business of what's happening rather than someone that's going to plug into that chaotic energy and take you on a ride.
And fan the flames. Right. I love you pointing out this because it's so true. The attorney you pick, I've seen it go both ways.
Right.
And when women are coming to the divorce more grounded in like, I know they've already kind of digested what the marriage was, what's been happening here. They've decided and they're grounded in that decision. Then they're not needing to call their attorney to kind of do those pieces, right, of the emotional processing and I'm freaking out, which can get really expensive really quickly.
Mhm.
And they are less likely to find attorneys, like you said, that are going to try and fan those flames because we've regulated them enough to be like, I don't want to stir up
Right.
the crazy. I don't want to get back into this. I just want to move through the process
Right.
cleanly.
Because I say all the time, the divorce process, that's business, right? We are not
Oof.
equipped, trained, any of those things to kind of navigate the emotional side of things. We're required to at times, but that's not what your divorce lawyer is trained to do. So you want to treat it as business as well, right? You want to be in and out. That's kind of the model. And if you're not regulated, it's really, really challenging to do that.
Absolutely.
So, something you talk about on your platform, which really stood out to me, is the idea of emotional attachment that looks a lot like the Stockholm syndrome. So,
Mm.
someone is bonded to their pain or the person that caused said pain. And how I see this show up in the divorce process is the person wants to repeat the story over and over and over and over again. And if you're stepping in and saying, I sympathize with you, I support you on this journey, but we need to get to the business of divorce. But they're going to tell me the story. They're going to tell my paralegals the story. They want to align with people that validate the story. Can you speak to that?
Oh, Demetria, I love getting to do this with you because it's like, yes, you are on the opposite end of what I'm trying to help my clients not do, which
Right.
is use their attorney as their emotional processing sounding board.
Hmm.
And what you're seeing there is just, I think we all grow up thinking you're going to be an adult and it's just going to magically, like, we look at our parents and we think they've got it figured out.
Right.
But now that I'm an adult working with other adults, I realized, like, no, the trauma that happened in your childhood, the difficulties you experienced there, the trauma you've experienced in your marriage, that doesn't just magically like get put under a rug or in a box and go away and now
Right.
you function. It lives in your body. It's something you're dealing with every day. So, yeah, this idea of the Stockholm syndrome came up with when I was talking to your producer,
Hmm.
this idea that, you know, what is it about us that kind of wants to go back and keep rehashing the things that we ultimately, like on some level, know are unhealthy for us, but we seem to emotionally not be able to let go of? And my response to that, the work that I do with my women, like what I've learned over the years, is trauma is real. It doesn't go away and it requires time to go back in. And the way I think of it is like you have to pull that stuff back out with a safe individual that can help you sort back through it, feel back through it, make sense of it for yourself, reclaim your story from the things that happened to you, find an empowering take on it. And then you can more easily get to the business piece.
Hmm.
It's almost like a sequential. I'm always like, I have one-on-one clients that I'm working with where I'm like, do not go talk, like use me, do not go talk to your attorney about this.
Thank you. Thank you, Britta, because thank
Yeah.
you.
Because she had not here to give you that work. The trauma processing, I would also offer a lot of trauma processing happens in therapy. Coaching, I would say, is more of the strategic, yes, we're looking at some of that processing it, but we're also like finding how can we optimize right now? How
Hmm.
can we find you those resources, those connections, those ways to think differently that get you moving? Because I've realized trauma processing is a like lifelong
Right.
journey for a lot of women. So it's
Right.
not something you're going to magically do and then get divorced. But it is important to understand and have resources for that are separate from your attorney taking you through the divorce.
Right. And what I think most people don't realize is if you don't do this work, the likelihood of you picking someone similar to your experience is very, very high. And I think, I'm not a scientist, but just watching what has happened over the years, that's why second marriages has such a high divorce rate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't do the
Yes.
work, you don't heal, you're backdating, you're attracted to all the things you were attracted to, and then it's the cycle until you
Yeah.
stop and identify, okay, how did I get here? why am I here? What do I want to be different? What do I need to fix? Right? Because
Yeah.
a lot of times we get really wrapped up in what the other person did and how they hurt you, and it's really
Yes.
hard to look in the mirror and say, okay, what can I do different? How can I detach from this story? And how can I heal what needs to be healed in myself so I'm not back here?
Absolutely. I have literally coached women in second marriages where, as we're coaching, they're like, oh my God, he's my first husband,
Right.
just in a different package.
Yes.
And I'm like, yes, sweetie. And
Yes.
that goes back to that kind of what we were talking about with the, the phrase we're using for this is Stockholm syndrome,
Right.
but it's this idea that you get attached, you have this psychological response where you develop positive feelings and sympathy for someone that's hurting you.
Right.
And that is rooted in childhood.
Mm-hmm.
That's just dynamics there that you are unconsciously then playing out in your relationships. And until you slow down, I loved you saying it's an individual process, because it really is, making space for you to go be with and interact with those parts of yourself, have a compassionate witness talk with you about what happened. That's what provides that resolution that we're often seeking and looking for in people who our patterns draw us to people that are ultimately not going to be able to do that for us.
Right.
Because that was our blueprint in childhood.
Right. Just a bonus to women that are not quite probably in a space where they should be calling a divorce attorney. Are there a couple of tips you would give women to say, ask yourself these questions? And if they're not positive, maybe you should call you, Britta, or someone to help me get to a place that I'm ready to proceed with the business of divorce.
Yeah. So this makes me think of a group of women that I think struggle the most when it comes to figuring out if they want to stay or go, and then going through the process are those that are experiencing narcissistic dynamics. Those would be the women. And typically why that's so difficult is because what you need to get through a divorce cleanly is self-trust and being able to depend on yourself. That's the very thing that gets destroyed in that dynamic with someone, not even someone who can be fully diagnosed as a narcissist, but someone who just has those traits and behaviors that will systematically be torn down over the process. So often by the time they're finally going, something is wrong, they're at the lowest point that they've probably been at in their self-trust. So some of the questions to ask are, really checking in with looking at your partner and being like, do I genuinely want to be around with this person? When I am around them, do I feel better or worse than when I'm not around them? The people that do love me and see me and seem to be able to enjoy being around me, what is their take on this person and how they treat me? So it's really being able to step out of the dynamic with that person and start to more objectively see it and center your own personal experience. Not so much, is he a narcissist or not, but how do I feel with this? I'm speaking specifically from women, but it goes both ways, right? How do I feel with my partner? And is my mental health over the trajectory of the relationship trending upwards or downwards?
That's awesome. I might have you create a checklist for me and say, before you call me, please answer these questions.
Are you maybe experiencing these things?
Right. I mean, you have to do it when you go get a physical, right? Go down a checklist to help the doctor kind of narrow in on what you need. And I think that's challenging for me because I think I'm so empathetic that it's so easy to get married, but there's no support once people start going through this process. But then we're saying there's no support, but be mature when you do it. It's just there's so much going on that there should be more support, right? There should be a Britta at the start of the process before people even get to me and have to go through the business of it, right? Because I guess in some points, and some people might think that I'm cold because I'm handling business. So it's not that I want to be disconnected, but I don't want you to spend all your money in therapy with me when I'm not even equipped to do that.
I
So,
love you saying, I remember when I went through my divorce, because I didn't have the resources that I provide now,
right.
right? Like
Hmm.
I didn't have a podcast speaking specifically to women considering.
Right.
I didn't have the community that I've created of women all, like you said, like just talking about it, just knowing other women are going through it. And I remember calling my best friend after talking to my attorney one time and being like, she is so mean. She is so mean. She's so disappointed and upset with me. And my
Right.
best friend, who was a coach at the time, having to be like, that is not what you're paying her for.
Right.
You have a therapist. She is not here to hold your hand. She is here to protect your interests.
Right.
She is, and she was beautiful. Like she was the bulldog I needed because I
Right.
was leaving a more narcissistic marriage. And I needed someone to stand in front of me and say,
Right.
she's not going to agree to all the things that over the relationship I had accommodated with. So yes, it is a framework of changing and understanding. It makes me think of tools, using the right tool at the right time and knowing, kind of being able to check in, where am I at in my process? Because the process of considering divorce can span years. Decades.
Yep. Yep. I have a really good friend now that she went 3 or 4 years back and forth. She didn't know. But I think it's important, even with that, right? Because again, we align with our stories. We create this kind of narrative in our mind. That's why I think it's super important to get with someone like you in the beginning to work through that, right? Because even your friends don't understand. We're going to be there. We're going to be supportive. But at some point, we're like, okay, stop talking about it already, right? And so you have to do your work in addition to healing from what has happened. Which brings me to another point, and I think a lot of people get on this wheel of people ask me all the time, okay, so when should I leave? And I'm like, I don't know. I can't
I do not have a
answer.
crystal ball. Did you see? I'm an attorney.
Right.
I'm not a.
So how do you know? How do you coach someone to leave at a place of acceptance and clarity versus leaving in chaos, right? Because as we talked about, those are two different experiences ultimately. So how do you talk someone through that? Because I don't know when you leave. I don't know.
Yeah, this is my wheelhouse. When you start talking about like, how do we know when it's time to leave? My whole body just gets excited because I am super passionate about women understanding that when you do the work, the answer comes more naturally. So many women come to me very focused on like wanting to know the answer.
Right.
Am I going to stay or am I going to go? Right. And I know, even though that's the framework that we're working within, which is like why I think considering divorce is such a, I view it as a like incredibly beautiful and transformative opportunity. Because obviously something's not working and now you have a chance to examine it. It hurts bad enough. You're ready to look. When you start doing this process, right? Which I talk about it a ton in my podcast. Obviously, I can't talk about all of the details here, but reading the books, learning about the things that your friends don't know about, learning about CPTSD, learning about attachment styles, all of those parts, you go on a journey. And while you're on that journey, you start learning about yourself. You start seeing your partner in different ways. And for different women, it goes different ways. That's why I'm in the process of considering. I have women that end up staying and creating something different with their partner. And then I have women that end up going. But what I've seen with the women that end up leaving is it's like a point where their self-trust just grows enough and they learn enough that eventually there's just this moment that comes through and it's often unexpected where you're just like, oh yeah, that's it. You're finally just ready and it's clear and you make the decision. Doesn't mean it's easy after that. There's still going through that hallway, going through the tunnel of divorce. That's actually one of the hardest things I've watched my women go through in the community. Once you hit that tunnel, it's like, we just are like on, the marathon of just keep going. But that certainty really helps them go all the way through the tunnel to the finish line because they've developed enough of just that tipping point happening before they move to that.
So, can you speak to what happens when you don't do that journey and you leave in chaos? How is that different than leaving in clarity?
Yeah. So this is like, I get so emotional when I think about women, anyone really, right? I talk about women because that's just that's my group that I focus on. But, I mean, I have a partner who's been divorced twice now, and it really does break my heart how much individuals who, come out of marriages that are not a good fit. Often you're coming out of all of that trauma and you are really low resourced. And then you want to feel good again. You want to feel optimistic and hopeful. And many of us seek that in another relationship. And then you get to just start the whole pattern over. And years get wasted in kind of this just like churning of reliving your trauma without really understanding what you're doing to yourself. And so I have a ton of compassion for individuals that do this because, like you said, I think we have so much negative stigma around divorce that a lot of people come to it unwilling, often forced or frantic or chaotically, and then come out of it still with a lot of unrepaired baggage that never really goes away and can potentially be carried forward. So that's the risk of not just like slowing down and going, okay, let's just get some foundation up in here first.
Right.
Let's make sure we really want this and we really feel good about it going in. You're never going to feel 100% like, yes, but you are, I always talk about it as like, it's feeling certain and also terrified. That's how I know my women are ready. They're certain and they're also terrified because it's stepping into the unknown.
I'm going to have to send this podcast to everyone that asks me, when do I leave? What do I do?
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, I always instruct people to make sure you can live, right? That your finances are in a place, that you're going to be okay, that you're safe and all of those things. But in terms of, and it's a great question if you think about it, right? When is it over? I don't know.
That's
Right?
a super, super personal. I know women who come to me like financially, they're going to be fine, but I can tell what hasn't been resolved yet is just the grief.
Yes.
It's crazy how you can know a relationship isn't good for you. You can want to get divorced and there's still grief there. There's still an ending of dreams and things that need to be processed and witnessed for you to still, I think of it as like, it's not just getting through a divorce, it's coming through as a whole person.
Right.
It's coming through and having the parts of yourself and being able to compassionately be there for yourself through all of it. That is the real gift you give yourself when you slow down a little bit. And I mean, I do want to say there are some people that can't, the nature of the divorce is one where they just have to go through it, but that work can be done post as well.
Right.
It's just at some point, do this work. It's amazing if you can do it before.
Right. I want you to speak to, because I've seen, friends you went to school with or whatever, and their parents, there's a parent that just never got over it, right? Or people that claim to stay for the children or stay for whatever reason exists for that person. But can you speak to your point that you often speak to on your platform of staying costs more than leaving? So what does that look like?
Yeah. So I think what's often not discussed in our culture, when we think about the costs of divorce, we're often very focused on what's it going to do to the children, the amount of money, that we're going to lose in a separate, the settlement, maybe losing where you're living, work, friends, your status in society because you're no longer married, you're divorced. But what doesn't get discussed is what it's like to live every day of your life in a dynamic where you are feeling unseen, where you are disconnected from your partner. Especially a lot of the women that find me that resonate most with my message are women that are deeply empathic. They want deep connection. They want emotional connection. They want to feel seen and loved and known by their partners. And that's something you can't really quantify with numbers, right? Like the cost of living every day of your life feeling like the one person you want to be the most close to is the person you feel the most disconnected from.
Mm-hmm.
So when we get into the realm of thinking of what am I losing staying, you have to start quantifying, what are you losing of the person you could become, of the things that you could build with the time and the life that you have left. That yes, there's going to be a risk in changing courses and going out into the wilderness of the unknown, but there's also an opportunity for you to build something completely different with your life. And we often frame that for my women by helping them, go to your deathbed and look back. What are you going to be sad that you never experienced? And if you're okay with not experiencing those things, that's a good indicator. Okay, well, maybe I'm going to stay. But if you're like, no, my soul wants to know and experience these things, those are the things that you're paying the price of by staying in a place that you're just like, well, it's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we get, especially women, we become, to your point, okay with accepting mediocre circumstances. If that means our kids are going to be great or take the backseat to a spouse, whatever it is, it's really, really hard from what I've seen. I think we're getting better with this, but sometimes it's really hard for women to say, wait, what do I want? I'm going to put myself first. I want my children to be okay. Yes. I want my spouse to thrive. Yes. But to what cost? What is that going to cost me? And it's okay to say, I want to feel okay. I want to be loved different. I was talking to a friend this morning and she said, I just want to be loved in a different way. And that's okay, right? It's okay to say that. I want to be loved different.
Yeah. I have to say too, this was the hardest thing for me leaving my marriage was starting to believe like I can have what I need and everybody else can have what they need too. Like I had to believe that there was a world where me thriving could actually mean my children were thriving too, where it didn't have to mean my empty cup and me always giving to everybody else is how I take care of the people I love. I had to reimagine, nope, my cup, I'm going to live a life where my cup is full, overflowing, and the overflow gets to go to my partner and to the children that I love. But it's not going to be a life where my cup is drained to the dregs and everybody else feels good, but I'm slowly dying inside. And from doing it myself, I've learned that is the case.
Right.
You can build a life where you do get to be vibrant and fully yourself, and actually the people around you are supported more fully in that process.
And you most definitely should, because as kids get older, they go out with their friends. They don't really look for mom anymore like they did.
Yes.
So it's extremely important to make sure you're doing what you need to fill your cup. Because sometimes we give so much, we don't even have anything to give.
Exactly.
Britta, like I can talk to you probably for hours.
I'm feeling the same. I'm like, let's just go. Where are we meeting?
And so I like that we spent this first episode on considerations on when you should leave. Does it make sense to leave? Are we going out of chaos or are we a little more grounded? I think this is very, very important because I get this question all the time. And now I have a resource to refer to when it comes up. But I think it's important, and we like to be very, very positive here, right? Because once you come out of this, like living again, redefining who you are. And so I'm so happy that I get to go on your platform and we get to talk more about this conversation. And overall, I think both of us have the same goal in terms of empowering women to make informed decisions for themselves and living the lives that they deserve at the end of the day.
Absolutely. I feel the same way about you when you keep saying, women come to you and they're like, when do I leave? And you're like, that is not my wheelhouse. Women come to me and they're like, so what are my next steps legally? And I'm like,
Right.
I am not an attorney. It's like, no. But I am very, I saw the benefit of having an attorney in my own divorce. I'm very yes, especially for women in dynamics where they have lost their self-trust. You need someone at your side that has got your back and is going to make sure, like you said, if you want to thrive post this experience, I firmly believe you need to get everything you deserve from that marriage. All the resources that you can have to help you going into that next phase of life be really set up in the best way possible, because that's what helps you thrive. And when you thrive, if you have children, they thrive as well.
Absolutely. And your children are watching, right? So sometimes we might say, we're staying for the kids or whatever it is, but kids are very, very intuitive and they're very smart. So you're not doing your kids a service by staying if that is not authentic, your authentic choice, because kids know.
Yeah. And I always say, I think you have to understand that there was a lot of research pushed in the 80s and the 90s, really pushing this family first idea.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And what I've, started to see is you have to go way deeper than just, well, my mom and dad are married.
Right.
In the world we live now, it's what are the dynamics of that marriage, and realizing the marriage you have is the blueprint you give for your kids. That's what they grew up seeing a marriage being. I ended up in the same marriage my parents had, even though I said I never wanted to have their marriage.
Right.
How does that happen? It's because that's what your brain's wired to do in very subconscious ways.
Right. Wow. Yeah, that's pretty deep. That's pretty deep. I hate, because I know Crystal's probably somewhere kicking up because I haven't ended the show, but I had so much fun. Can you tell everyone how to find you?
Yeah. So the best way to find me is through my website, stayergocoaching.com. That'll have all the big pieces. Actually, probably the best way, that's my second favorite, best way is to go find the podcast, the Stay or Go podcast for women considering divorce. That is the resource I'm the most proud of. Incredible. Just when we've talked about the journey many times, that's where you can start finding what are the books? What are the techniques? What are the pieces? And then I'm also on Instagram. My handle is considering divorce.
Oh, I don't love that people have to find us, but I love that there are resources such as yourself, because a lot of people need help, right? Because it's definitely a hard process. I wish I can hold everyone's hands in the way that you probably can, but I can't. So I think it's important that people have the resource to work on what they need to work on before they come to handle the business. So I thank you, because the space needs you, the community needs you. So thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.